Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
If you followed the 2025 Formula One season, you'll definitely remember the Mexican Grand Prix. I mean, it had plenty of action.
Oh, absolutely. A real thriller in part.
It also served up this huge slice of controversy afterwards.
Massive one, yeah. And it all seemed to center on one specific moment.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. We've got the official source material, the telemetry data, driver radio transcripts, the steward's notes.
The proper evidence.
We want to figure out precisely why that one incident sparked such a firestorm.
And that incident was Lewis Hamilton's mandatory 10-second time penalty, lap 6.
Right, which just completely changed his race, dropped him from fighting for a podium, down to P8?
P8, exactly. So
Yeah.
our mission really is to look at why that penalty, which, look, technically you could argue was justifiable by the letter of the law, why it exposed these deep, painful cracks in F1's stewarding consistency.
That really is the heart of it, isn't it? The penalty itself felt like a symptom of something bigger. Because when it all settled, the phrase everyone seemed to be using in the paddock, it wasn't about who won, it was double standards.
That phrase came up again and again.
So we need to see if the documents, the evidence we have, actually backs up that highly emotional claim. Or was this just Hamilton breaking a rule, plain and simple, full stop?
Well, it's rarely full stop in Formula One, is it? I mean, the FIA, they had a defense that was technically pretty solid, based on the rule book.
Okay.
But the reaction, the emotional response from drivers, teams, fans, it just completely swamped that technical argument.
Okay, let's unpack this. We really have to start with the sequence of events, the sort of chronology of chaos, because this penalty didn't happen in a vacuum.
No, definitely not.
The flashpoint was lap 6, yes, but it came right after a really aggressive, messy start. Turn 1 was, drivers were already pushing limits, crossing track boundaries everywhere.
Yes, and that initial chaos is absolutely essential to understanding why people felt there was this asymmetry later on. Well, right at the start, you had Max Verstappen make a very aggressive move at turn 1, pushed Hamilton wide. Now, crucially, the stewards looked at that, and they ruled it a racing incident. No penalty. Verstappen kept the position.
Right, so you can imagine Hamilton maybe feeling a bit hard done by there, setting the stage for him wanting to fight back pretty quickly.
Exactly. But the key difference, the thing the stewards focused on, was what happened just moments later between turns 2 and 4.
Okay, explain that difference.
So let's compare the moves. Earlier, between turns 2 and 3, Verstappen defended, ran onto the grass himself.
Right.
But he wasn't penalized. Why? Because our sources, the telemetry data, confirm he actually lost a bit of momentum. There was, and this is the official wording, no time position gain. His aggression didn't actually get him a lasting advantage there.
Okay, so that's Verstappen's move. But then came Hamilton's attempt to fight back at turn 4.
Yes. Hamilton tries this aggressive pass around the outside. He locks his front left brake.
The lockup.
Yes, and the data actually shows his deceleration was 1.2 G. The stewards specifically noted later this was below optimal, which basically points to a driver error, right?
A mistake under pressure.
Exactly. And because of that lockup, he cuts the corner completely, goes across the grass, and crucially, rejoins the track ahead of Verstappen.
And that that's the critical moment for the steward.
That's the trigger, absolutely. Hamilton's action there, cutting the corner and coming back on ahead, it immediately fell under FIA Article 27.3.
Which says?
Basically, you can't gain a lasting advantage by leaving the track, and if you do, you have to give it back, relinquish it. He gained track position, he gained momentum. The data showed him 0.8 seconds ahead when he got back on the asphalt.
Okay, let me be really clear for you listening. What does lasting advantage not relinquished actually mean in practice? Does it mean he just had to immediately brake and let Verstappen back past, even if he felt Verstappen had pushed him towards that situation initially?
In simple terms, yes. The rule is very strict about the outcome of going off track. If you leave the circuit and come back on having gained either time or track position, you have to give it back immediately.
No excuses.
The telemetry proved he rejoined 0.8 seconds up the road, and he didn't slow down. He didn't yield that spot back to Verstappen. So under the rules, as written, he had to get a penalty.
And it was 10 seconds. That seems harsh.
Well, the notes we have confirm it was mandatory because he didn't give the place back. If he had yielded immediately, slowed right down, let Verstappen through, the penalty could potentially have been half to 5 seconds, maybe even just a reprimand.
Wow.
But because he kept the position, that 10-second penalty was locked in. And after serving that, Well, his race was effectively compromised. He ended up P8.
Yeah.
So if you look purely at the FIA's justification, their argument, the steward's notes, based on that telemetry, it was, scientifically quite solid.
Airtight, even.
You could say airtight from a purely data perspective. They weren't making a subjective call there. They had the numbers. He rejoined 0.8 seconds ahead, didn't yield. They followed Article 27.3 to the letter about gaining that advantage.
Okay, but hang on. If the notes were airtight, if the data proved he gained time and didn't give it back, doesn't that just mean the whole paddock reaction was simply sour grapes, like Red Bull suggested?
Yeah.
I mean, we all get caught up in the emotion, but surely the rule book has to be king here.
Technically, yes. The rulebook was followed for Hamilton's specific action at turn 4. But, F1 is as much about perception, momentum, and frankly, fairness as it is about pure rules sometimes.
Right.
The source of the fury wasn't really Hamilton's lockup and corner cut itself. It was the stark contrast. His mistake, which came from a driver error, right, that lockup that gets punished strictly by the book.
While Verstappen's earlier aggression.
The move that arguably forced Hamilton into that desperate situation in the first place, that gets waved off as a racing incident. No consequences.
Ah, I see. So the FIA was technically correct on the penalty itself.
But optically, to many people, it looked completely asymmetrical, like one rule for one, another for another.
And then the reaction of the main rival involved just poured gasoline on that whole optical fire, didn't it? We're talking Max Verstappen. When he was asked about all the criticism from Hamilton, from Mercedes, his response after the race was that just incredibly blunt, stone-cold, three-word zinger, not my problem.
Yeah. That comment, I mean, from his point of view, maybe it was accurate, right? He didn't ask for Hamilton to get penalized.
Sort of how it landed.
Exactly. How it landed was, well, critics saw it as incredibly tone-deaf, maybe even arrogant. It just fed that narrative, that suspicion of FIA leniency towards Red Bull.
Especially given the history.
Right, especially when you think about Verstappen's own track record, what was it, something like 20-plus penalties across previous seasons. For many observers, that dismissive shrug just seemed to confirm this idea that maybe he could race with a certain impunity while his rivals were being measured with a micrometer.
And this feeling, this frustration, it wasn't just coming from Hamilton or his immediate team, was it? It seemed like a genuine chorus across the grid. And George Russell, Hamilton's teammate, he was probably the most vocal.
Russell was absolutely incandescent. You could hear it on the radio. And the transcripts we have really show why. He was complaining early on, wasn't he, about being squeezed off track himself at the start.
Yeah, felt he lost out right away with no penalty given to others.
Exactly. But the quote that really caught fire, even though I don't think it was broadcast live, was that absolutely withering jab he made about Verstappen's tactics over the radio. He said, this kid's a fing joke.
Wow. That's strong language from another driver. It really captures the mood, doesn't it? It feels like more than just criticizing one move. It's like criticizing the whole pattern of behavior he felt was being allowed. A breakdown of trust.
Precisely. It wasn't just about one incident. It was about the perceived lack of consistent stewarding enabling that behavior. And Russell didn't back down after the race either. No, he doubled down in his interviews, called for actual changes from the FIA, and he explicitly used that phrase again, arguing Hamilton's penalty was the prime example of double standards.
And his reasoning.
He pointed out that drivers like Verstappen, and interestingly, Charles Leclerc too, they kept positions after cutting corners in that initial start chaos. No punishment. Russell's point was pretty pragmatic. He figured if the rules had been applied fairly to everyone from the start, he could well have finished P3 himself. So the leniency didn't just affect Hamilton, it potentially skewed the whole race result.
We absolutely have to talk about Charles Leclerc here, because his situation is almost the perfect encapsulation of the perceived hypocrisy that was fueling this whole thing.
He really is a fascinating case study in this specific race, a dual role, as you say.
Yeah, because at the start, he cut turn 1, didn't he?
Yeah.
Briefly even led the race because of it, but managed to avoid any penalty in all that opening lap confusion. I think Jolyon Palmer, the pundit, called him out on it.
Yes, Palmer said Leclerc basically gained a position illegally there and was just, quote, lucky that the stewards had their hands full with everything else going on at the start.
So Leclerc benefits from that initial leniency, keeps a potentially ill-gotten gain.
That's the first irony. But then, later in the race, when it suited him...
He wanted the rules strictly enforced on someone else.
Exactly. He got on the radio to his Ferrari team, pushing them to report Verstappen for supposedly not slowing enough under yellow flags. His message was something like, that's a penalty, get them on it.
Right. So it really highlights that dynamic. Maybe drivers want flexibility when it helps them, but demand absolute rigidity when it hurts a rival.
It certainly looks that way sometimes. It's human nature, perhaps, but it doesn't help build trust in the system.
And the team principals, they weren't exactly singing from the same hymn sheet either, were they? They really solidified the divide.
Oh, completely. Fred Vasseur at Ferrari, he called Hamilton's penalty very, very harsh. He made the point that in those specific low-grip conditions at that corner, losing 10 seconds wasn't just 10 seconds. It effectively cost Hamilton maybe 5 places, 5 championship positions.
Like a big impact.
Huge. Meanwhile, Toto Wolff at Mercedes, he just called the whole decision a letdown. And significantly, he publicly urged the FIA for transparent telemetry sharing.
Which sounds like
a direct signal of distrust, right? Questioning the evidence or at least wanting to see it all laid bare. And then, of course, on the other side,
Christian Horner at Red Bull
stood firm, dismissed all complaints as just sour grapes, basically doubled down on their aggressive approach being perfectly fine. So this is where we kind of bring together the main argument from the critics, the pundits looking at this, people like Martin Brundle.
Okay.
While they acknowledge that, yes, technically the FIA's defense on Hamilton's penalty held water based on Rule 27.3, the telemetry did show he gained an advantage. But Brundle and others argued F1 desperately needs symmetry in its application of the rules.
Symmetry. Meaning
Brundle felt Verstappen should have faced consequences for his aggressive move earlier at turn 1, the one that forced Hamilton wide. He suggested at least a drive-through penalty might have been warranted there.
Okay. So the logic is Hamilton made a mistake, the
Right.
lockup and the rule book punished that, maybe fairly in oscillation.
Right.
But the unpunished aggression from Verstappen before that mistake contributed to Hamilton even being in that desperate off-track position to begin with.
That's exactly the argument. Brundle's point, and others echoed it, was you can't have it both ways. Either you allow aggressive, forceful driving off track and maybe show some leniency on the resulting defensive errors, or if you're going to strictly punish the error like Hamilton's corner cut, you must also punish the initial aggressive act that caused it.
And the stewards didn't do that.
They seemed to selectively apply the rulebook, focusing only on the consequence, Hamilton's positional gain, rather than the whole sequence, the totality of the circumstances. And it was that perceived lack of symmetry, that inconsistency, that really triggered the paddock's anger and that feeling of eroding trust.
And look, this isn't just about one race in Mexico, is it? This kind of controversy immediately brings back echoes of other really painful historical moments. You can't help but think of, say, 2021 Abu Dhabi.
Absolutely. The shadow of Abu Dhabi looms large over any discussion of stewarding inconsistency. That history is unavoidable context.
And has the FIA responded to these double standards claims directly?
Not really head-on in their official reports note. They tend to stick to the specifics of the incident they penalized, but the sources we're seeing suggest the backlash this time was significant enough to force some internal reflection.
Oh, really? What are we hearing?
Well, word is that insiders expect a kind of mandatory review of how track limits are enforced. There might even be a specific stewards briefing scheduled before the Brazil race weekend, really focused on trying to clear up this ambiguity, trying to find that consistency everyone is crying out for.
So what does this all mean for you, listening to this, trying to figure out where the truth lies?
Well, the technical evidence, it seems pretty undeniable. Hamilton did break Article 27.3. He gained an advantage cutting the corner and didn't give it back. So the penalty itself, you have to say, was technically valid according to the rules.
Yes, by the letter of the law.
But, and this is the huge but, the massive controversy wasn't really about the rule itself. It was driven almost entirely by the optics, how it looked to enforce that rule so strictly right after apparently ignoring other aggressive moves by rivals just moments before.
The context killed them.
Yeah. And the fan reaction showed that disconnect, didn't it? Those polls run right after the race. What was it? 68% of fans thought the penalty was unfair. That's a huge majority. And it really highlights the core tension this whole saga throws into sharp relief, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. It's F1's constant battle, this tightrope walk between the raw thrill of aggressive wheel-to-wheel racing, which, let's face it, is what fans often love.
Absolutely.
And the fundamental need for equity, for consistent enforcement that the drivers and teams need to actually trust the whole process, trust the governing body.
So this controversy really proves that in Formula One, a decision can be technically correct according to the rulebook,
but feel fundamentally wrong in the context of the race, in the context of fairness.
And it all came down to human judgment in the end, didn't it? Hamilton's lockup was a human error under pressure. and the penalty was applied by human stewards making a real-time call, choosing to focus on the result of his error, not necessarily the cause or the preceding events.
Which leaves us with a really provocative thought for you to mull over, maybe. If the technology exists now and it does to automatically police track limits, to take the human steward, the subjective interpretation, completely out of the equation, would you actually prefer that?
A perfectly consistent Formula One, maybe enforced by AI or instant detection.
Potentially, yes, but maybe less thrilling, less controversial. Or is the current system the high-stakes reliance on human judgment with all its flaws, all the controversy, all the high drama it generates? Is that actually part of what makes F1 so captivating?
That tension between technological perfection and human drama.
Yeah.
Definitely something to think about as the teams head into the next race weekend.
In all this, it's more like FIA has just told the drivers that they are free to do anything in turn 1, which means it's official. In turn 1, my dear, just shoot, go ahead, cut the corner, you are good to go. That's what they have just told the drivers. But here is the solution. What I think, it just means that every first turn they either have to put barriers, walls, or put gravel. Look at this gravel. That will get a driver stuck right there. So a driver will choose either get stuck in the gravel or just follow the rules. Forget about, or rather get rid of too many rules. Rather let the track be the one implementing the rules. When you put all these barriers, there will be no need for anyone to cheat. So turn 1, they need to do this and start putting either gravel or barriers to stop drivers than letting people cheat turn 1. Max knew the rules. So Max and Red Bull, they are cheaters. They read the rules. They knew the rules that they are lenient on the first turn for turn 1. So what did they do? They told Max, just, hey, I think you just have to hit this. Come on. And exactly that's what he did. He knew he wasn't going to make the corner. He knew that he was going to go straight. He had already the plan, but he went free of charge. Look at this. Lewis was in P2. He could have finished P2. Look at Russell, P3. Why is Leclerc cutting the corner when there is nothing that is hindering him? He just chose to shoot. The team couldn't tell him to give back the place. So what is this? That's why I say, Lewis, I think there is no team that is going to treat him well. Mercedes did that. They were so bad towards him. Ferrari, they have who they are supporting. It's more like these teams, some of these teams, that's just how they are. They have one driver they support. Look at Max. Any driver that will go there, they won't have a second car. You see that? So that's it, people. Please subscribe, support, and let's hear what you have to say in the comments. I'm sure you got something to say. Goodbye.